The music was soft, violins and chatter, the sound of crystal glasses clinking under chandeliers. I remember thinking how perfect the night felt, until I saw her. Lena. She stood by the entrance of the ballroom, framed in gold light, a frozen echo from another life. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide, disbelieving, like she'd walked into the wrong reality. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just held her stare as Clara's hand gently brushed mine, the diamond on her finger catching the light. For a second, time fractured. The years, the silence, the promises that dissolved into nothing, all of it collided in that single breath. She looked beautiful, of course. She always did. But beauty has a strange way of decaying when it arrives too late. She tried to smile, but it trembled, broke, and vanished. Her fingers clenched around her purse. I saw the regret bloom in her eyes, raw, sharp, real. And all I could think was how quiet my heart felt. She finally gave up everything to come back for me, I whispered to myself, the irony heavy in the air. But by then, I'd already learned how to live without her. Before the lights, before the music, before the glint of a diamond ring, there was us. Lena and I met in college, when everything felt possible. She was studying film production, always surrounded by scripts, cameras, and a kind of reckless energy that pulled everyone toward her. I was quieter, architecture major, the kind of guy who preferred blueprints over crowds. She used to tease me for it. "You're too careful, Ethan," she'd say, her chin resting on my shoulder as I worked on a design. "You measure every line twice before you even draw it once." I'd glance at her smile, half annoyed, half in love. "And you," I'd reply, "don't measure anything at all." That was Lena, the storm that made me step into the rain. We built our own rhythm over late-night coffees and empty campus hallways. She'd read me her script ideas, wild and impossible. I'd sketched dream houses we could live in someday, by the sea, with big windows and soft light. She'd laugh, saying she didn't need a house yet, just a story worth telling. I didn't know it then, but that was the first sign. She was always chasing something bigger, something beyond us. I still remember the night she told me she got the offer. We were sitting by the old fountain behind the library, the one that always leaked from the side. Her hands were trembling around her phone, eyes bright like she was holding the universe. "Ethan," she breathed out, "they want me. In London. It's a directing internship. 6 months, maybe a year." I smiled, or tried to. "That's amazing, Lena." "It's everything I've worked for," she whispered, eyes glistening. Then softer, "but it's so far." I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. I told myself love could stretch across oceans. People did it all the time, right? When I walked her home that night, she kept slipping her hand into mine, squeezing it as if she could store the warmth. But behind the excitement, I saw it, that flicker of guilt she tried to hide. "You'll wait for me?" she asked, stopping at her dorm gate. I looked at her, memorizing every line of her face. "Of course I will." She smiled like it hurt. "Just give me a few years, Ethan. I'll come back." The weeks before she left were a blur of small goodbyes. Late-night dinners, unfinished movies, her suitcase growing heavier by the day. I'd catch her staring out the window, lost somewhere beyond the skyline, and I knew, part of her was already gone. The night before her flight, we stayed up till dawn. She fell asleep on my shoulder, breathing softly, her hair brushing my neck. I watched her sleep, and the thought came uninvited, what if she never comes back? I hated myself for thinking about it. So, I kissed her forehead instead and whispered, "I'll be right here." When she boarded that plane, she looked back one last time and waved. I waved too, but my chest felt hollow. Watching her disappear into the crowd felt like tearing out a page I'd written my future on. The first few months weren't bad. She called often. We'd talk for hours, laughing, telling stories like nothing had changed. I'd send her photos of the sunrise from my apartment window, She'd send me clips of London streets, her voice bubbling with excitement. But slowly, the time between calls grew longer. Her messages are shorter. Sorry, I've been crazy busy on set. Miss you, but can't talk right now. Promise I'll call soon. Soon it became later. Later it became silent. I'd stay up staring at my phone, refreshing our chat like it could bring her back. Her voice, once constant, turned into a ghost haunting the static between ringtones. When she finally did call, her voice sounded different, sharper, colder, like the city had filed away her softness. How are you? I asked. Good. Tired, she said. You wouldn't believe how cutthroat this industry is. I laughed weakly. You'll survive it. You always do. She smiled faintly. I hope so. Then silence. I wanted to tell her about my new project, about how I'd finally gotten a promotion at work. But she interrupted, saying she had to go, something about dinner with friends from production. The call ended. I sat there, staring at the empty line, realizing I didn't even know who those friends were. It wasn't one moment that broke us. It was a slow erosion, small absences piling up until there was nothing left to hold on to. Her birthday came, she forgot mine. I sent her a hand-drawn card, she replied 2 weeks later with a polite "Thank you, Ethan, that's sweet." That word, sweet, hit harder than any argument. It sounded like a pat on the head. I started noticing her in pictures online, smiling beside people I'd never met, at events I'd never been invited to. Her eyes sparkled, but not the way they used to when she looked at me. Still, I waited. I kept her framed photo on my desk. I kept writing her letters I never sent. I told myself it was just a phase, that she'd come home and everything would fall back into place. But deep down, I knew love can't compete with ambition. Not when ambition wins awards and love just waits quietly in an empty room. The last time we talked, her voice sounded miles away. Ethan, please understand, she said, soft but final. I just need time. Don't wait for me forever. I tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. Forever's a long time, Lena. She didn't reply. The line went dead. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at my phone screen until it dimmed to black. And in that silence, something inside me finally cracked open, not from anger, but from realization. Love doesn't always fade with distance. Sometimes, it fades because one person stops reaching back. And I think that's when I stopped being the boy who waited. The silence began softly, like a draft slipping under a closed door. At first, I told myself it was nothing. She was busy, working long hours, building her dream. The messages that once came every night now arrived every few days, then weeks. Her tone changed too, still kind, but polite. Detached. Sorry I missed your call. Been crazy with the new project. Can't talk now, we're doing night shoots. We'll tell you everything soon, promise. That word again, promise. It used to mean something. Now it sounded like filler, a line she said out of habit. I scrolled through her social media more than I'd admit. Pictures of her surrounded by new faces, directors, actors, assistants. All smiling. All strangers. She looked radiant, but different, her eyes sharper, her laugh louder, like she'd shed the part of her that belonged to me. Then one night, a friend from college texted me. Hey, man, saw something online. Didn't want you to find out like that. Attached was a photo, Lena at a film festival after-party, hand resting lightly on a man's chest, an actor, someone famous enough to have headlines under his name. The caption read, Director Lena Parker spotted with rising star Adrian Cole, the new power duo. My stomach clenched. I stared at the image for what felt like hours, reading every comment, every pixel of her expression. She was smiling, the same smile she used to give me. Except now, it wasn't mine anymore. I didn't believe it at first. She would have told me, I thought. It had to be publicity. I convinced myself the industry worked that way, fake chemistry for promotion, fake smiles for fame. But deep down, something inside me had already started to fracture. I sent her a message that night. Hey. Saw something about you and Adrian. You okay? No reply. I waited. Hours turned into days. Finally, she responded. Ethan, don't believe everything online. It's just work stuff. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt the emptiness between her words. I wanted to ask, then why didn't you tell me first? But I didn't. I was afraid of the answer. Weeks passed before I couldn't take it anymore. I booked a flight. London, 7 hours ahead, a lifetime apart. I didn't tell her. I just packed a bag and left, telling myself that love deserved one last chance. The city greeted me with cold rain and gray skies. I stood outside her production studio, clutching a coffee, rehearsing what I'd say when she saw me. She came out hours later, laughing with her crew, and him. Adrian. They looked comfortable. Natural. His hand brushed hers as they crossed the street. She didn't pull away. I froze where I stood. The coffee in my hand went cold. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to. That night, I called her. She answered on the third try. Ethan. Her voice sounded surprised, maybe guilty. Hey, I said quietly. I'm in London. Silence. Then, what? I wanted to surprise you. She exhaled, a long pause. You shouldn't have come. The words landed like stones. I just thought we could talk, I said. In person. I'm really busy right now. Shooting every day. There's no time. Lena, it's been months. I know. Her voice softened. I didn't mean to make you worry. But things are complicated here. I'm trying to keep up. I wanted to tell her I'd wait outside her studio, that I just wanted an hour. But something in her tone stopped me, not anger, not even exhaustion. Indifference. Ethan, she said finally, please understand. I just need time. How much time? She hesitated. I don't know. Don't wait for me forever, okay? That word, forever, hit like a blade sliding clean between the ribs. And then the line went dead. I stayed in London for 3 more days. I walked the streets she might have walked, hoping I'd bump into her again. I didn't. When I flew back home, I left my heart somewhere over the Atlantic, weightless, empty, unclaimed. Days bled into weeks. Her absence became a routine, a dull ache that hummed in the background of everything. Work, sleep, meals, all mechanical. I stopped checking my phone after a while. The silence had become familiar. But heartbreak has strange timing. It doesn't explode all at once, it seeps in quietly, like rain through cracks. There were nights I'd wake up reaching for her, my hand landing on nothing but cold sheets. I replayed every memory, her laugh, her touch, the promise she'd come back. Each one felt like a lie I'd willingly believed. I stopped sketching for a while. Architecture lost its rhythm. Every line I drew seemed crooked, unstable, like me. But life, cruel as it is, doesn't wait for broken people. Bills piled up. Deadlines loomed. I had to function again. So I did. The healing started without permission. One morning, I walked into the local coffee shop, the same one I used to visit with Lena, and saw someone struggling with a heavy box by the door. I helped her without thinking. Thank you, she said, brushing her hair back. You'd think I'd have learned not to carry an entire shipment alone. I smiled faintly. You own the place. Kind of. I managed it. She extended a hand. Clara. Her voice was calm, unhurried. A strange contrast to the storm I'd been living in. Over the next few weeks, I kept running into her. Morning coffee runs turned into small talks into shared laughter. Clara wasn't like Lena. She didn't shine like fireworks, she glowed like candlelight, steady, quiet, safe. She never asked too many questions, but she listened when I spoke. And somehow, she knew when not to. One evening, as we locked up the shop together, she asked softly, "Who broke your heart?" I froze, caught off guard. She smiled gently. "It's okay. You don't have to tell me. I can hear it when you talk." I didn't reply. Just looked at her, at the warmth in her eyes that didn't demand anything. It wasn't love, not yet. It was peaceful. And after everything, peace felt rarer than love. Months passed. Lena became a shadow, a name I stopped saying out loud. I heard she was rising fast, her films getting attention, her face in magazines. I didn't search anymore. I'd seen enough to know her world no longer had space for me. Clara and I grew closer, quietly, like two people finding warmth after winter. She wasn't a replacement. She was proof that I could still feel without bleeding. Sometimes, though, when the night stretched too long, I'd still think of London, of the rain, of Lena's voice saying, "Don't wait for me forever." And I'd whisper to the dark, "I didn't." 3 years. That's how long it took for her to become a memory that no longer hurt. By then, my life had rebuilt itself, not spectacularly, not with the intensity she once brought, but with quiet steadiness. I had my own firm now, a small architecture studio that focused on sustainable design. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. My hands shaped something tangible again. Clara was beside me through it all. She didn't fill Lena's absence, she taught me how to live with it until it disappeared. We moved into a small apartment overlooking the river, sunlight in the mornings, city lights at night. It was the kind of life I used to dream of with Lena. Except now, it was real, built from scars instead of fantasies. Sometimes, I'd see her name flash across headlines. Award-winning director Lena Parker signs a new deal. Rumored romance with Adrian Cole heats up. I'd scroll past them like weather reports. They no longer felt personal. Just distant noise. Then, one evening, as autumn painted the city gold, she came back. It started with an email. Subject, "Hey." No message. No signature. Just that one word. I stared at it for a long time, my cursor hovering over the screen. The sender's name, Lena Parker, felt like a ghost knocking on my door. Clara came into the room with tea. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just an old contact." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and left. I didn't reply to the email. But I didn't delete it either. A week later, she showed up. It was a gray Thursday afternoon when I saw her again, standing in the lobby of my firm like a mirage pulled from another timeline. She looked older. Not in a bad way, just different. The sharpness was still there, but dulled around the edges. There were faint shadows under her eyes, the kind that fame and insomnia both carve. "Hi, Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost careful. For a moment, words failed me. My mind flickered through years of silence, of anger, of acceptance. "Lena." That's all I could manage. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You look good." "So do you," I lied. She glanced around the office, her gaze lingering on the framed photos, my team, Clara and I at a project opening. The ring on my hand caught her attention, and I saw the first crack appear in her expression. "Congratulations," she murmured, almost inaudible. I waited. "Why are you here, Lena?" Her shoulders tensed. Can we talk? Somewhere private? Against my better judgment, I nodded. We ended up in the cafe across the street, the same place where I'd signed my first big client. I ordered black coffee, she didn't touch hers. She looked around, like she couldn't quite recognize the world she'd left behind. I saw your interview last year, she said finally. About your company. You looked happy. I am. She smiled faintly. I'm glad. Really. Her voice trembled slightly, the way it used to when she was hiding something. I leaned back. What do you want to say, Lena? She hesitated, eyes darting to the window. Everything fell apart. I didn't respond. Just let her speak. Adrian, she paused, swallowing hard. He wasn't who I thought he was. The tabloids were right, it wasn't just work. I thought it was love. But it wasn't. He used me. And when the scandal hit, he let it all fall on me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I saw the tears forming, but they didn't move me the way they once would have. I lost everything, Ethan. My reputation. My career. The people who said they believed in me stopped answering my calls. I watched her twist the ring on her finger, not a wedding band, just a habit she'd picked up. And then, she continued, I thought about you. I looked up sharply. I kept thinking about that night before I left, she said, her voice trembling. When you told me you'd wait. And how I told you I'd come back. She exhaled shakily. I finally did. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the espresso machine. I came back for you, she whispered. The words hung in the air, fragile, heavy, years too late. I studied her face. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the girl I had once loved. And I wasn't the boy who used to dream of her return. Lena, I said quietly, you didn't come back for me. You came back because there was nowhere else left to go. Her breath caught. That's not true, she said quickly. I made a mistake, I know that. But I never stopped thinking about you. Did you think about me when I flew to London? I asked. When you told me not to wait forever. She flinched, her eyes darting away. People change, she murmured. They do, I said. I did. I glanced down at my ring, the faint glint of gold reflecting between us. You came back expecting the same boy who once cried for you. I met her eyes, steady, unflinching. But he's gone. Her composure cracked completely then. You don't understand, she whispered, desperation seeping into her voice. I was lost. I thought I needed success to be someone. But it was all empty. You were the only thing that ever felt real. Her words trembled, genuine in their regret. But they felt like ashes now, sincere, yet useless. I did love you, she said, almost pleading. I know, I replied softly. And I loved you too. But love doesn't survive abandonment. It just rots quietly until there's nothing left. She reached across the table, her hand hovering above mine. Ethan, please. I pulled my hand back gently. Don't do that. Her eyes filled with tears. So that's it? I nodded slowly. That's it. When I walked her out of the cafe, the sky had darkened. Rain began to fall, light at first, then steady, like London rain. She stood on the curb, staring at me through it, drenched but unmoving. You really are happy, aren't you? I am, I said truthfully. A broken smile tugged at her lips. Then I guess I did one thing right. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She turned, pulled up her hood, and disappeared into the crowd. That night, I sat by the window with Clara asleep beside me, watching the city blur beneath the rain. My reflection looked back, calm, unshaken. For years, I imagined what I'd say if she ever returned. I thought I'd want revenge, or closure, or maybe just to hear her apologize. But when it happened, all I felt was, nothing. Not hatred. Not satisfied. Just peace. She had come back for the man who once lived for her. But he no longer existed. And as the rain tapped against the glass, I whispered to the empty night, words she'd never hear. Goodbye, Lena. I kept thinking revenge would come with a plan. A scene. A line that would cut so clean it would haunt her for years. I imagined dramatic things, exposing her, humiliating her, turning her world upside down. I imagined fireworks. It never felt right. What grew instead was a quiet, steady thing. Not vengeance so much as clarity. Not a wound reopened, but a wall built around myself. That wall became my answer. The first week after our cafe talk, Lena called 3 times. The first time, I let it ring out. The second time, I answered and put the phone on speaker while I made dinner. Her voice was thin, urgent. Ethan, please. I need to explain. Explain what? I asked. My tone was flat on purpose. It kept the edges sharp. She swallowed. Why did I leave? Why did I do those things? I was scared. I thought success would fill the holes. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry. Words. An apology. Old ghosts dressed as apologies. I listened. I let her spill regrets and shame and the story of being used, of being abandoned by the very people who had once praised her. She cried. I heard her breath hitch over the line. It sounded honest. Thank you for telling me, I said when she finished. I'm glad you're talking. There was a pause. So. Can we meet? I want to try, I want to make things right. Is that possible? I thought of the flight I'd taken to a cold city, of standing in the rain and watching her move away with someone else. I thought of all the nights I'd spent replaying what she'd said to me on the phone, don't wait for me forever. I thought of my younger self, waiting and hoping and shrinking into silence while she climbed. No, I said simply. She gasped. No. Ethan, please. Don't be like this. I'm not trying to hurt you, I said. I don't think the meeting will change anything. Not for me. You don't mean that. Her voice broke. I did. I meant it with a bone-deep certainty I had earned through the slow work of getting up each morning and choosing myself. She asked again. She begged. She turned to guilt. She sent old photos of us, one of me laughing with a pen behind my ear, her head on my shoulder. She wrote, remember the fountain? Remember the promise? I kept my replies short. I kept my distance. I was gentle, when gentleness was called for, because being cruel wouldn't rewrite the past. It would only make me small. Still, there were nights I sat up and felt the old ache. I'd watch Lena's name appear on my screen and then vanish into the call log because I couldn't bring myself to answer. Those were dangerous moments. They felt like cracks. They reminded me I was human and that the boy who loved her still lived in the corners of my chest. Clara noticed the tension before I did. She watched me when I stared at my phone. She didn't pry. She made tea without asking and slid into bed beside me when the night felt too large. Her presence was solid. Her questions were practical. Do you want to see her? She asked one morning, while we walked to the river to clear our heads. No, I said. Not really. But sometimes I do. Sometimes I want to ask her why she couldn't say it to my face. Why couldn't she tell me to my face that she loved someone else? Clara looked at me. And if she had said it, she asked. I didn't know how to answer. Because part of me wanted the scene I never got. I wanted that night in London to be explained away with honesty rather than erasing the person I loved. But honesty doesn't always fix what's been broken. You don't owe her anything, she said. You owe yourself a life. Those words landed differently than any of Lena's pleas. They felt like an order made of kindness. The more Lena tried to claw back into my life, the more I realized revenge wasn't about breaking her. It was about not breaking myself again to make room for someone who'd left. It was about letting her see, clearly and painfully, what she had thrown away. That idea started small. I stopped avoiding things I had once avoided because they reminded me of her. I started taking meetings at night. I said yes to lunches with clients I'd previously let slide. I took on a renovation project that required me to travel. All of these things built a life out from under the shadow she still cast. It wasn't petty. It was practical. She noticed. Her tone shifted into a new kind of panic, not the rawness of confession, but the quiet, clinical fear of someone who realizes they've lost their leverage. Are you dating someone? She asked in an email, the question blunt and small. Yes, I replied after a pause. There were no fireworks at that moment either. Just a click, a small seal of reality. I could almost hear the recalibration on her end, how to compete now that her ghosts were facing a real person rather than an ideal. When she found out Clara existed, when she saw a photo of the two of us at a project's opening, arms wrapped around each other, the message she left on my voicemail changed tone. It was softer. It was embarrassing. It was pleading. I didn't know, she said. I didn't mean, I never meant to. Don't explain to me, I said into my coffee, more tired than angry. Explain to yourself. She sent flowers to the office. She showed up at a talk I gave about sustainable design, standing near the back in the kind of anonymity that once would have felt sweet. She left notes. She mailed letters she'd never mailed before. Her efforts read like a person trying to buy back a life with slow, expensive gestures. All of that could have been a trigger. It could have pulled me back into old patterns, the saving, the forgiving, the hoping. It didn't. It taught me instead how to hold my ground. But I was not immune to doubt. There were afternoons when the weather turned and a rain pattern matched a London storm and I would curse my memory for its accuracy. I would think, maybe I'm cold. Maybe I'm unforgiving. Maybe I'm the kind of man who misses the chance to be heroic. Those were the nights I spoke with Clara and let her steady my logic. There's a line between forgiveness and self-erasure, she said once, tracing the rim of her mug. You can forgive, Ethan. You don't have to put yourself back in the place where you get hurt. She never asked me to punish Lena. She never suggested any cruel theatrics. Her revenge, if it can be called that, was quieter. She trusted me to choose myself. And that trust was the most stubborn, beautiful thing I'd been given since Lena left. So I planned, in my own way. I made space for joy. I booked a small weekend trip for Clara and me with no phones, no emails. I said yes to a client who wanted a community center in a neighborhood we both loved. I stayed present at home when it mattered. I went to therapy twice a month and learned that grief can be managed without being erased. I told my friends about Lena honestly, what she gave me, and what she took. Saying it out loud made it less spectral. Lena's attempts intensified. She asked to meet one more time. Just to hear your voice, she said. I promise, no drama. I just want to say I'm sorry, properly. There was a part of me that craved that closure. I pictured the scene, her eyes on mine, me listening, a moment that might finally fold the past into a neat package. I almost agreed. Then I remembered the look on her face the night the scandal hit, the way she looked past me, hunting for anchors that were no longer there. I remembered how she'd let others shoulder the fallout. I remembered how her promise not to make me wait forever had sliced me open anyway. I thought about Clara's hand on my back, the way she squeezed when she wanted me to keep going. I thought about the small, steady life we were building, a life not built on dramatic gestures but on 1,000 tiny, repetitive acts of care. That was the plan. A life. Not a performance. Not an act of theatrical revenge designed to humiliate. Not a public spectacle. Just a clean, honest life that would, in its very existence, say what I could not spit out in a single moment of cruelty. She left, and everything I built after that was proof that I could keep breathing without her. When Lena texted that she was coming to the city for a week and wanted to meet one last time, I didn't respond immediately. I took the time to picture what the meeting would be like. Would it tear us both open? Would it close doors that had begun to shut on their own? I wrote back that afternoon. Short. Clear. I can't meet. I'm sorry. I wish you the best. No please. No explanations. No invitations to debate history. It was the most merciful message I could send someone who had caused so much unintentional damage. She called them, 3 rapid rings. I let it go to voicemail and listened later. Her voice was small, raw. I thought you'd at least talk to me, she said. I thought you'd want to know why I came back. I played the message twice. I felt nothing but a fading sadness and a stubborn peace. I told Clara about the call. She put her hand over mine. It's okay, she said. You did what you needed to do. That night, as we lay together, I planned something less about hurting Lena and more about honoring what had helped me heal. I imagined a ceremony, small at first, then not, where the people who had stood by me would come. A night not to show off, but to acknowledge the life I chose. If Lena saw that life, the laughter, the ring, my steady hand inside Clara's, she would finally understand the cost of leaving. Not because I had shouted it at her, but because the silence of my absence would be deafening. And that silence would be the thing she couldn't bargain with. So I let her try to win me back. I let her beg, apologize, and rationalize. I kept my answers measured. I kept my heart guarded. I let my life do the quiet, inevitable work of proof. There was a coldness that settled in me during this time. Not cruel. Not bitter. Just clean. It was not the fiery kind of revenge I had once imagined. It was the kind that arrives when you decide that you will not shrink for anyone again. I was careful, too. I didn't gloat. I didn't orchestrate moments to press a point. I refused to dehumanize Lena. I understood her failures. I knew what ambition could do to a person. I forgave privately, but I did not invite her back into the house she had left. When I finally picked out a ring with Clara, it felt like the most honest thing I'd done in years. The jeweler asked if I wanted something flashy. I chose a simple band with a small diamond set low, solid, understated, built to be worn every day. I thought of the life I wanted, practical, lasting, visible only to those who cared to look closely. A week before the engagement party, the night I would decide, if only in private, to let the world know, Lena sent one last message. No begging this time. No pleading. Just 2 words, I'm sorry. I read it, then set my phone down and went to the kitchen where Clara was chopping onions. She looked up and smiled. What did she say? She asked. Nothing worth answering, I said. She laughed softly. Good. Then we should finish the salad. We worked in the kitchen like we always did. No theatrics. No final scenes. That, more than anything, felt like revenge. Not for her. For myself. For the quiet dignity of choosing a life that included someone who loved me back in the small ways that mattered. And when the night of the party came, when she walked in and saw the ring, I wanted to be able to say I had not planned to break her. I wanted only to show, with the calm of someone who has healed, what she had lost. Revenge, I decided, could be that simple. That night felt suspended, one of those evenings where the air itself carries memory. I remember the low hum of jazz, the clinking of glasses, the soft murmur of congratulations that seemed to swim around the chandelier light. Clara's hand was warm in mine. The ring, small, understated, honest, caught and threw back flashes of gold. I was content. Not euphoric. Just still. Then the double doors opened. It was the sort of moment you see only in movies, the crowd shifting, the light bending, the silence cutting through laughter like a wire. Heads turned before I did. But when I looked, I already knew. Lena. Her eyes found me first, the way magnets find their counterpoint. She froze, completely, utterly, her expression collapsing between shock and something unnameable. The kind of look that says this wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was late. Not fashionably, not dramatically. Just, too late. She stood there in a pale dress that used to mean victory for her, the kind people wear when they expect the world to pivot back toward them. But her timing had missed the rhythm by years. The applause from the toast had just finished. Clara's ring had just caught the light for the first time. And I was standing exactly where Lena once told me she'd find me again, except I wasn't waiting anymore. For a heartbeat, I saw the Lena I used to know, wide-eyed, alive, filled with that energy that once made me want to orbit her. But now there was something behind her eyes, panic. A flicker of the realization that this was no longer her story. She stepped forward. The sound of her heels echoed in a rhythm that didn't belong in the room. Guests whispered. Some recognized her name from the news, the scandal. Others just sensed the tension that suddenly thickened the air. Clara's hand tightened around mine for a moment, not in fear, not in jealousy, just in quiet understanding. She leaned toward me and whispered, "It's okay. You don't have to do anything." I nodded. But part of me knew I did. I let go of Clara's hand gently and walked toward Lena. Every step felt heavier than it should have, the years pressed into them, the old love, the old hurt. I walked slowly, calmly, so no one would mistake my composure for indifference. Because it wasn't indifference. It was peace, hard-earned and fragile. She blinked when I stopped in front of her. "Ethan," she whispered, voice breaking on the name like glass underfoot. I didn't know. I didn't think. Lena. My voice was steady, quieter than the music, but it seemed to still the air around us. "What are you doing here?" Her lip trembled. "I came to see you. I needed to see you. I thought. Maybe I could stop this. Maybe." The words died in her throat. The ring on my hand, the ring I just slid onto Clara's finger, glittered under the chandelier. Her eyes fell on it and stayed there. I saw the recognition hit her, the regret, the collapse. All the color drained from her face. I could have turned then, walked away and let the silence do the work. But she deserved to hear it, not out of cruelty, but out of closure. For both of us. "I waited for years, Lena," I said, my voice calm. "I waited through letters, silence, rumors. I kept waiting because I believed love was supposed to endure." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, please." "But you taught me something," I said softly, not stopping. "You taught me that waiting doesn't bring people back. It only makes you fade." The tears broke then. She pressed her hands to her mouth, trying to hide the sound. The crowd had gone completely still, no music, no clinking, just the faint hum of the lights above us. "I was scared," she said, barely audible. "I thought you'd move on, but I didn't think you'd." "Live?" I asked quietly. "I didn't think I would, either. But I did." I could see every emotion flicker across her face, disbelief, grief, shame. For a moment, the years melted, and I saw the girl I once loved, standing on the platform with tears in her eyes, saying, "I'll come back to you." She had. Only now, there was nothing left to return to. "You look happy," she whispered finally, voice cracking. "I am," I said. "And I hope, one day, you will be too." It wasn't a curse. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the truth. She nodded, small, shaking, and took a step back. Her heel caught the edge of the carpet. A waiter reached out instinctively, steadying her arm. The guest started murmuring again, quietly, unsure whether to look or look away. Clara was watching from across the room, calm, composed, not smug. Just steady. She knew I wasn't doing this for a show. I was doing it for the man who once waited under streetlights and wrote letters to a silence that never answered. Lena tried to speak again, but the words failed her. Her breath came out in short bursts, tears streaking down her face, reflecting the light. And for the first time, I realized something: she wasn't crying just because she'd lost me. She was crying because she saw the version of me that her choices had created. Stronger. Quieter. Free. I took one last look at her, not with hate, not with longing. Just acknowledgement. "Goodbye, Lena," I said. Then I turned. Each step back toward Clara felt like a chapter closing. The whispers behind me were muted, half pity, half awe. I didn't care. I found Clara's hand again, and she didn't ask a single question. She didn't need to. Her fingers fit perfectly into mine. Behind me, I could hear Lena's breath hitching, a soft, choked sound swallowed by the music as it resumed. The violin picked up where it had left off, almost mercifully. Guests moved again, filling the silence she left behind. A friend of mine discreetly walked her to the door. No one made a scene. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. Later that night, when the last toast had been made and the laughter had softened into background noise, I stepped out onto the balcony for air. The city lights stretched beneath me like stars scattered across the earth. I thought about all the years between us, the promises, the letters, the versions of ourselves that no longer existed. Clara joined me a minute later. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Yeah. Just thinking. About her." For a second, I admitted. Then I realized. I don't feel anything anymore. Just gratitude, maybe. For what? For what she taught me. For leaving when she did. If she hadn't, I might never have found this peace. Clara leaned her head against my shoulder. Sometimes the people who break us are the same ones who shape us. "Yeah," I said quietly. "But we still get to choose who we become after." We stood there in silence for a while. Inside, the music swelled again, laughter, glasses, the pulse of life continuing. I looked down at the ring on my hand, then back out at the skyline. That was my revenge, not cruelty, not spectacle. Just the undeniable evidence of a life that had moved on. And somewhere, across town or maybe already on a flight out, Lena would be sitting in the back of a cab, mascara streaking down her face, realizing the same truth that had once broken me. When you take love for granted, it doesn't stay frozen in time waiting for your return. It learns how to live without you. And when it does, it never looks back. The night had finally quieted. The guests had gone, leaving behind half-empty glasses, soft laughter echoing down the corridor, and a faint scent of lilies that clung to the air. The city stretched below me like a constellation in motion, a million tiny lights, each one belonging to someone chasing something. I stood on the balcony, jacket loosened, the noise of celebration dimmed behind the sliding doors. From here, I could see the skyline Lena once dreamed about, the same skyline she chased, thinking it would fill the void love couldn't. For a moment, I wondered if she was still out there somewhere, wandering the streets, replaying tonight in her mind, trying to make sense of how the story had changed without her. The thought didn't hurt. Not anymore. It just existed, the way a scar does, visible, but no longer tender. The cool air brushed against my face, and I found myself smiling, not out of triumph, but out of peace. There was no revenge left to savor, no pain left to unearth. Just the stillness that comes after finally closing a door that's been half open for too long. "She once told me love was about chasing dreams," I murmured, the words barely louder than the wind. Maybe she was right. I looked down at the ring on my hand, simple, solid, real. The city lights flickered across the metal like passing stars. Because I chased mine, I whispered, eyes lifting to the skyline, and it led me here. A car passed below, its headlights sweeping across the street, and for a brief second, I imagined Lena's face in the glow. The shock. The sorrow. The moment she realized love had kept moving while she stood still. She came back for me, I said softly, the words hanging in the night like the final note of a song. But I'd already moved on. The wind carried the sound away, and I turned back toward the warm light spilling from the room where Clara waited, laughter, music, life. I closed the balcony door behind me, and with it, everything that used to hurt. The story was over. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting anymore.